Before the final assembly could take place, there were still a couple of details on the body that needed to be attended to, like the rubber molding around the windows, and also some of the back panels for the clear lights on the rear, and a couple of other parts in the engine bay as well. The interior could then be stuck onto the chassis, the sun visors and rearview mirror could then be glued onto the headliner, and then it was time to attend the tedious task of putting that chassis, interior and body all together with a bit of pushing, pulling, cracking, crackling, and some other weird noises you don't really want to hear, but in this case it turned out really fine. As I won't be using the stock wheels from the kit, I simply don't think they look good enough, and I'm changing them to some others I need to make those fit. So the hub inside of the wheel needed to be shortened a bit in order to create the correct offset. And I could of course use the stock disc brakes, but those didn't really look good enough behind those big shiny wheels, so I took out a set of Brembos that come with a couple of the Fujimi wheel sets. These are not sold separately, but if you buy some of those wheel sets, sometimes they come with them, and I had a couple of spare ones laying around, so I figured I'd use them, as they would look really good in these big open spoke wheels. Before gluing that all together, I needed to paint the calipers, just going with a flat black, and also add a bit more detail on the disc itself. I glued a super thin piece of plastic onto the back of the discs and then could glue them into the wheels onto the hub and not have them all slide around. With that all said and done, I could move it into the wheel well, glue it in, have the correct position of the caliper, and also set the ride height I want. The rear wheels were treated the same, though they didn't really want to fit inside of the wheel well, so either I needed to remove a couple of pieces from the inside of the wheel well or on top of the wheel. Now, I wasn't really planning on cutting into the wheel well, creating a lot of mess, and therefore I'm just going to cut off a bit of the tire and a bit of the wheel itself in order to make it fit. Now, for some of you this might be a really big deal. I personally don't mind at all, as the top of the wheel will never be seen once it's glued inside of the wheel well, and since the wheels don't turn anyway and I'm not going to be playing with the car itself, I'm totally fine with it. On the engine bay, I still needed to add a couple of parts and also add a lot of the decals that I didn't in the previous part. All of the detailing is now done on the inside of the engine bay, so I could focus on the exterior, gluing on a couple of final parts like the spoiler, the side mirrors, also the mirror glass itself, a couple of the latches, logos, and other grills around. The grills on the front look really good, though they could use a bit more depth, so I added some Timia Panelline accent color to accentuate the lower areas and make it not look all bulky and chromy like it did before. All of the clear parts on the windows themselves were masked off. I could then paint the black edge around it, let that dry, and in the meantime move on to some of the other clear parts like the taillights and the headlights, and adding some color and some black to those as well. Once the paint had enough time to cure on all of those parts, it was time to finally glue them in place. And that's pretty much it for this one. I really like the way that it turned out. I even tried some new camera angles, as I mentioned in the last video. In this video, some of them weren't really as clear and sharp as I wanted them to be, so I know that I need to adjust it and work on it a little bit more, but maybe I'll just go back to the head mount in some of the other projects coming up. We'll see, maybe I'll use both of it. Let me know down in the comments below again which you prefer, and if you want me to work on this setup more or just go back to the way it was.